Good morning. Just playing a little Madden 22 on the old PlayStation. And I had some thoughts that I wanted to share with the audience, with subscribers about Dell and I's conversation yesterday. So Dell and I try to periodically, when we're available. Obviously, I was gone for a long time. We routinely will have video chats. Dell lives on the other side of the country, right? So we've never been able to collaborate face to face or really sit down and actually write together. But what we do is we have dialogue, we have conversation. The best thing about collaboration is conversation, because what it does is it gets you thinking and it gets you outside your own patterns, right? And it might even spark ideas that maybe even neither one of us completely had fully whole, but then spark something. So last night we talked for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. I did record the conversation, but I don't think I'll put it up. It's a lot of us just chatting about gaming in general, which is part of how I think the best way to learn, the best way to develop ideas is to break down what you've been doing your whole life, or break down what other games do, and break down how that feels, the experience of that, and what you're trying to achieve. And I've told Del before, no matter what we write, we can't make players play the game differently, really, right? We can't. We can't. We cannot. We cannot. You just can't. You can't carry. If somebody purchases a painting, the artist is not going to be there to tell you, what the painting means. You have to figure that out for yourself. And the artist may say, no, that's not what I meant. Well, the person who purchases the painting says, listen, I don't care what you meant. This is what I get from it. Go away. It's my painting now, right? So once the book's published and it's out there, it is what it is, and it's for the world to try, read, enjoy, hate, whatever, right? And that's your goal, is to create something and then share it and hope that the world gets back something positive from it. And I've been creating my whole life, whether it was music when I was a kid in my late teens, early 20s. We made music for us to express ourselves. I didn't really care what the rest of the world thought of it. It just wasn't relevant. You create because you need to create. When I designed my tabletop football game, my goal was to make the game I wanted to play, because I was going to be the one playing it, right? I was trying to create something that I couldn't find out there in the rest of the tabletop football simulation world. So I created the game I wanted to play. And then you share it with the world and hope there's other people that want to play that way too, right? You can't help whether there's a lot or not. And, one of the goals is, if one person likes what you do, that's enough, right? It's enough to say, cool, somebody else gets it, somebody else enjoys this thing, or somebody else likes this style or this thing, or this football game, or whatever, or this, crappy video game football, which I'm such a football nut, I'll play anything, right? So my standards are high, but I play what's only available to me, right? If I had all the money in the world, I would put a company together to make the perfect football video game, or at least perfect to me, right? Maybe not to other football fans, right? So, okay. But what occurred last night in our conversation, again, is we break down what we grew up doing, and we break down what we find ourselves doing at the table, either as even today as GMs or as players today in certain games that have a certain design intent. There's a culture there that exists that we're either carrying with us from our childhood, or a culture that exists because that's the intent of the game. And I'm not going to go through that whole conversation, but the gist of this video is this. Do we dare, I think what we need to do for Dark Age of Man, and this is, again, candid, one of the things that has been good about this process is I am candidly discussing what we are currently developing. I like to share this process with the world, and I like to share. I did this with my tabletop games that I was creating last year, a couple years ago. I don't mind sharing what my thought process. I don't mind sharing how I do a thing. I don't mind sharing some of the details. And the reality of that is, I think it's important I think it's important to recognize maybe people wake up in one morning and go, "Oh my God, I have the perfect game," and they sit down and they scribble out this perfect book or this perfect song or this perfect, maybe those savants, those songwriting savants, yeah, that stuff just pours out of them, right? But for a lot of us, we haven't developed the. It isn't like I've been writing tabletop role-playing games my entire 52 years where I've honed this skill. So at the same time, we're trying to say, well, what is it we're trying to achieve? What is it we want our game to do? What is it we want players, what's experience do we want players to have? What experience do we want game masters to have? And then how do we write that in such a way that we impart that a little bit, but at the same time, and Dell and I are overthinking much of this. Rules are rules, right? We know that. I know that. But before I send this out, before I send this to be published, this is the thing that we may only publish one role-playing game in our lives. I always swore I wouldn't because I didn't think that I could do anything better than I'd ever seen. And this is not now to say, yeah, egotistically I believe I can do better than that. No, it's because I now believe I have something to express. I now believe I've actually got something that I think's worth producing so people can enjoy it. Okay. But with that said, the goal is to make sure it is the game I will always be able to be proud of. It'll be the game that I say, you know what, we gave it our all. We dotted all the I's, we crossed all the T's. Oh, whoops, there might have been a spelling error, there might have been a couple of grammatical, okay. That's that kind of detail I'm not concerned about. I am concerned about whether we impart the idea of what we'd like people to achieve with the Dark Age of Man. Okay. Okay, long way around here. Now I'll try to sum this up. Sorry, I've had all these thoughts over the last few hours, and finally it culminated. I need to talk about this. So that's in the middle of this, right? While you're right braining it, my left brain's going, dude, you need to get to work writing, or you need to share this. So I'm putting it down. Okay. I think, and Dell kind of hit on this in a way. Dell's wanting to make sure people understand that this is not Dungeons and Dragons. This is not your traditional prepare for combat, move to the next phase, prepare for combat, move to the next phase. And I think we're both in agreement. We wanted our game to provide a different avenue to being a character in a fantasy, low gritty, low magic, dark world. When I say dark, I mean Dark Ages, not necessarily horror, right? Okay. But, and you want people to be able to create the character that they would like to achieve success with in this opportunity, this particular game setting. But what we haven't defined, and again, you can't define every avenue players could take. I'm hoping players are creative and players will find ways to problem solve that suits the character and what they're up against, right? The character perceives that the king needs help, and the king and the player's privy to something the Vikings want, and that player says, I want to make audience with the king, and the player goes over and he says to the king, I think I can help you with this Viking, Earl Tugga. And the king says, really, tell me, what do you think you can do for me, you peasant, right? And the player tells him his strategy. But then the player goes over to Earl Tugga and says, hey, I got the ear of the king, and I've been able to negotiate something that I think is in your best interest, and right? And so the player is free to, in a way, problem solve and utilize information or gumption, just straight gumption. Dude, I'm gonna go talk to Earl Tugga. Well, you're a nobody peasant. You think this Viking's gonna talk to you? Might, and gets on his horse and rides over to the Viking fortress and says, I want to talk to Tugga. I think I can get him some farmland, or whatever the case may be, whatever the players are thinking or doing, right? You want them free to be truly, in that way, player agency, and truly recognizing this is indeed an open world game, not so much an open world movement, but open world in that if they could perceive the information they get soundly, now along the way they'll encounter things that are dangerous, right? Depending on where they go, what they do. So there's been a lot of conversation about how do we impart to players that they could be a merchant who actually decides he's going to create a business in which he sets up a stall at the crossroads between two cities. We want players to be able to recognize they don't have to be the soldier off in the dungeon killing goblins, right? They don't have to play the traditional roles. They can find another way to adventure and enjoy this thing. But at the same time, and this is what struck me this morning, we're both talking about, okay, I don't think we want to say to players, here's all the possibilities. No. But it struck me, what's missing from most role-playing games? And this is the gist of it. Almost every game will say, what is role-playing? And then it'll say, role-playing is a game in which one side, one person becomes a character on adventures in the world, and the other person plays the referee who kind of provides the setting and the story, and they all work together as a cooperative game to achieve success. It's really not a game in the sense that you don't win. You can't win at role-playing. Okay, I think we've all read that passage in just about every role-playing game book, right? It dawned on me, and same with design intent, rarely does a role-playing game have a paragraph that says, the design intent of our game is to empower is to restrict the GM by creating a currency between the players and the GM. That currency is called Doom, or whatever, threat and Doom. And the players can utilize this to have a better chance to succeed, but meanwhile they give the GM a currency that they can use to cause calamity and create havoc, right? The design intent is to create a give and take currency system in, say, 2D20, Star Trek, etc., to create this slightly different style of table with some, I argue, board game elements, right? Okay, in a way, it creates this give and take between the players and the GM that actually activates success versus failure, okay? Or gives the GM carte blanche to now, because I have 16 tokens of Doom, to drop the dragon on your head, and you can't complain because you've been getting away with murder by giving me these tokens, right? Okay, I don't recall in Conan or Star Trek it saying the design intent of this game is to change the relationship between the players and the GM in a way of resource management. It may actually do that, I don't know. But my point is, and I've said this before, what's the design intent when you sit down to develop a game? When I sit down to make Flash Football, what was my design intent? I wanted it fast, accurate, and single player, period. I wanted it very simple to teach, very simple to play, and create realistic games of football with risk-reward. That was my design intent, and then I sat down and say, how do I achieve those things? How do I make the game that I want to do that? And that's what I did in 1996. Okay. And then talking to Dell, it's like, we can glean what the design intent of the original Dungeons and Dragons is, or let's say Moldvay, good example, because we know there's two ways, there's three main components in the original Dungeons and Dragons, or I should say older versions of Dungeons and Dragons. Again, I'm not referring to 3 and 3.5. I don't know them, I haven't read them, I don't play them. Hell, I didn't play AD&D 2nd edition. So really my experience is AD&D backward. Okay. Most OSRs that are clones of those as well, right? So let's be honest. There's basically, they create a random character to some degree. They select some things. They ultimately have one mechanical experience with a game that is generally around combat, right? There's saving throws, and then there's combat procedures, but outside of that, there's nothing that defines role-playing. There's nothing that defines personality. There's nothing that defines whether you convince the king, right? Do you convince the king old school through role-play, or do you convince the king through some die mechanic that later is introduced in newer versions of Dungeons and Dragons? Oh, make an intimidation check here, right? That didn't exist in the original games, okay? So much of it was utterly dependent on roleplay, right? Which then became GM fiat. Is the GM convinced or not? We use the reaction tables, which is usually what I would do, those kind of things. We come up with a tool, right? Okay, but let's face it, the most important piece game-wise of D&D is the character, the player's character, because the whole argument of the rules, I would argue original D&D was a player's guide. It was a player's handbook. There might have been the GM's guide or the GM's section, but really it was about how do you make a character and how do you improve that character and what happens when you level up that character, what changes, what other things can you do, by the time you get to level 10, what can you do, right? It's really about how do the players achieve success in this non-winnable game, right? Make it very clear, role-playing games are different. You really don't win at role-playing. But meanwhile, characters are attempting to level up and succeed, level up and succeed. So ultimately, there is some idea that there is some success in game terms. So, in all this conversation last night, it hits me this morning, about 3 in the morning. I'm up thinking about this. I'm pondering this. I'm jotting notes down. And I'm like, well, I need to rest. So I go back to bed. I get up, have my coffee, play some football. And all this percolation. So again, I've said before, the best part of collaboration is conversation, because it allows for ideas and brainstorming. And then, of course, it percolates. And then it percolates and you say, wait a minute. Do we dare do what most role-playing games do? Do we dare suggest there is an intent and there is an absolute goal? And I believe that is something that we should add to Dark Age of Man. I can't call it, and I've made this clear before, we're not attempting to reinvent or add such innovations that we change the face of role-playing. We're not that ridiculous. But we would like people to have a different experience. We'd like people to understand the goal. And I think we want people to have a certain freedom. We want players to have a different level of freedom, and we want GMs to feel less responsible for everything, right? We want GMs to be players in a way. So it struck me, and this is a very long video to get to this point, so here we go. I'll mark this in the timeline. Skip all this. Here's what you want to hear. We need to define what the intent of the game is in an introduction. And we need to define what's the goal of the players as characters in this world. What is the end game result? What are you trying to achieve? So last night, and it struck me only this morning, Dale said the other night is, I want players to think outside the box. I want players to think big. I want players to think, hey, who am I in this world? Where am I to go in this world? What can I achieve in this world? That's what I heard Dale say. That's how I processed what Dell was saying. Okay, now I may be a little bit inaccurate about Dell, what he meant to say, but I come away from that going, yeah, I think I understand what you're saying, Dell. You want them to experience a different character experience. But it dawns on me, well, we could say that, I guess. We could just write that, and then players go, yeah, what do you think, what does that mean? I think it starts by actually defining in-game. It starts by actually defining, how do you win this game? Right? What if we suggest you can have the best role-playing experience you've ever had, and the GM can have the most fun and liberating experience they've ever had with our game? But, ironically, to achieve that, we actually identify the goal of the game. We actually identify how you win the game. And I think that's the fine line, right? What makes master art? It is people who have mastered all of the pieces of art. Then, once you know the rules, you're free to, in a way, break the rules. You have to know the rules to break the rules, and that's what goes from a perfect painting to art, right? The guy who breaks the rules and knows how to break the rules and why to break the rules to actually achieve that art. Same with music, right? I mean, once you understand how to read and write music and you understand how to play, it's the guys that push the boundaries and know how to take all of those elements of music to create masterworks of music, right? No matter how complicated, no matter how simple, right? What's the master stroke, right? I think for players to experience that sense, they have to actually know what they're trying to achieve. And what they're trying to achieve is not defined by the rules, in that you need to become the King of England. You need to become the high priest of the church. No, but we identify how in general your character ultimately in-game wins. Where your character, when all is said and done, if the campaigns have gone the way of survival, right? The players have survived and they've made some effort to achieve success. Because what really I think Dell and I are having trouble with here is, in a way, saying to the players, it's not going to be good enough to roll up a bad character and go die. The goal is to create your character with these options, then engage the world and attempt to go from wherever you're at to the next echelon, and then encounter what problems arise at that echelon, and then eventually the goal would be to survive until you hit Repute 10, the highest level you can be. Repute 10 would be equal to kings, queens, right, in the world, and hopefully by the time you get to Repute 10, you have solidified yourself in Dredgewater or in England as a king of a province, or as the leader of the Vikings, or as the high bishop of the church, the Catholic, a church on the island, so to speak, versus Roman Catholic, right? The center of Rome, right? Which at this stage was what? I can't remember what was the center of Rome in 960. Is that still Rome? Constantinople? Paris? I don't remember where the Pope sat. That's sad. Ooh, I'm going to have to do some research. So where the head of the church was then, I believe, I want to say was it Italy, Rome? I can't. Jeez, the head of the church. I can't recall. Anyway, point is, we need to define what the intent of our game is, and then we need to say to the players, your goal to achieve success in our game, to win the game, to end the game at the peak of experience would be to try to survive and create a place in the world for your character and get to repute 10. You may not, you probably won't, but if you do, you will have played the game to its fullest glory. And I think that's what has to be in the rules. That this is a role-playing game. You have complete agency to create your character and put them in a setting in the world, ultimately. And then, the goal, though, is game-like in the sense that really, for you to have the perfect experience in Dark Age of Man, it is to find a way to take your peasant to the leader of your own Viking tribe, or take your peasant and move him up the ladder to become an earl, an elderman who owns land in the land of Dredge, right? Washburn's lands, right? Or you find yourself literally the steward of Dublin for the Queen, who's you end up becoming the leader of Dublin, holding the city for the Queen, or you end up who knows, but the goal, there would be an end game goal: get to repute 10, and put your character among the people of history. Work your character into the seat, repute 10, in which they would have written history about your character, right? That's what's missing, and that is what we have to write in the book. That's what we have to say in the book. We actually want players to achieve something. We actually have a goal. You can play one-offs, you can just play and have a good time, but really, to experience what we want you to experience in Dark Age of Man, you start at 3, your goal is to get to 10. It could take you 7 sessions, depending on how remarkable your sessions are in which your character earns repute, what you achieve to earn that repute. For instance, in session 1 already, Jory, in a playtest, his character already defeated the leader of our Vikings, and he helped win the battle in Dredgewater, and he has already earned a repute point. So he's at 4 repute. My character's still at 3, and Justin's character's still at 3. He's already at 4. So in 6 more sessions, if things are epic, his character in 6 sessions would achieve success ultimately, as his character, Ripa, would become a repute 10 Earl of the Vikings, settled in a fortress on the island of England, and they would tell stories of this guy, and he would ultimately be involved in the lore of England, and he could retire that character as the Earl of that fortress and becomes an NPC, or he could continue to manage his kingdom or whatever. But there would be an end game goal for that campaign. The first guy to 10 repute, in a way, wraps the game up, and we tell the tales of how that group, what experiences those characters had, and what amazing stories those characters had. And look where Ripa ended. He started as a 18-year-old kid on his first Viking raid or second Viking raid, and he almost died 3 times in the course of his life. And by the time he was 30, he was repute 10 Earl of Earl of Northwich, controlling the entire Northwich kingdom as he brought down the king of Northwich. And that's the tell of our campaigns, and that's where we wrap up that group of characters and we do something else, right? Meanwhile, the Earl of Northwich in the next campaign would be Ripa, a Viking turned transplant landowner of England, right? Ex-Viking, so to speak. We have to define the intent of our game for both GMs and players, but then we have to, I think, define the game. What's the end game? What's your goal? Because if you don't, players wonder. Players just kind of wonder, what do I do, what do I do? Players just kind of fiddle around and say, let's go get in trouble, oh, the king wants us to go kill bandits, okay, we'll go kill bandits. But what you want the players thinking about is, how do I improve my repute? How do I get to repute 7? And what am I trying to achieve? And you don't know, it's like real life. Somebody says to me, Jason, when you were a kid, did you think you'd be a professional fitness trainer for 22 years and full-time for 12 years? And I would have said, no. When I was 7, I thought I would be an actor. When I was 19, I thought I would be a musician. And so sometimes you just accidentally end up where you end up, right? I think that's kind of what should happen in a role play. When you experience the legacy of your character in a role playing universe, many things are luck, many things are an accident, but there would be some intent. My goal is to a player may in the first few minutes say, I'm gonna. They hear about this place called blah, and in their head they say, you know what? That sounds like something I could take over. I might actually take those lands, and they begin the process of trying to angle their character to get strong enough, powerful enough, influential enough to go take that land and become an ealdorman in England and retire at repute 10 as basically a king, right? A minor king. We're talking about maybe doing something most games don't do. Define what it is we're trying to achieve game-wise, intent of play and design, and then what we really want players to be trying to achieve from 0 to hero, from rep 3 to rep 10. We don't know what you're going to be. We don't know how you're going to get there. We do not know. We are naive. Players have goals to try to attempt to achieve things, make allies, do whatever, and the GM doesn't know. He has no idea that they're setting out. This isn't a campaign goal. You guys are going to start as a group of characters, and your goal is to take over the kingdom, and the players go, God, cool, let's see if we can do it. No, the GM won't know. The GM has no idea how it's going to go. We're naive. We're naive of that session. We're naive of the next session, and we're naive of where Ripa is going to end. Ripa could end in session 7, repute 9, on the verge, and he's ultimately cut down by the King of England because he's pushed too far and a couple of bad critical rolls, and he's killed in a battle with the King of England. And that's Ripa's story, right? He gets to repute 9 and he dies on the battlefield. We're still telling the tales of Jory's Viking, right? Meanwhile, where's my character at that point, and where's Justin's character at that point? And my character might well have been a turncoat and have been giving the king information that makes the difficulty level harder for Ripa to destroy the king, right? I could be working against him. Who knows? We don't know, right? So anyway, long video to say basically we may do something most role-playing games don't dare do. This is a game. This is the intent, and this is how you win. Or this is how you achieve the ultimate end game. I think that's something that helps. When you define boundaries, it helps players think broader. It's kind of ironic when you give somebody a white piece of paper in 3 colors and you say this is all you get. You'd be surprised how creative people will be when you actually give them boundaries. I don't want to give players boundaries on how their character is going to grow, what their character is going to do, and where their character is going to adventure, etc. But I want to give them the sense that you do want to achieve something. You don't want to just piss around and goof around. You want to actually be thinking, how do I get my character to repute? How do we get in 10 sessions to the highest level of repute? At the end of those 10 sessions, maybe the guys have only gotten to level 7 because they just didn't do a lot of miraculous things. They didn't achieve a lot of success. So we end those 10 sessions at repute 7. One guy's at repute 8, another guy's at repute 6 because he's been very cautious and he won't do anything dangerous, or you don't know. And then we can look back and say, in those 10 sessions, who had the most success, who really was the winner of said game, right? What happens if we say that role-playing games can be won? Thanks.